I was watching an Instagram video. The channel is these two brothers who are monks. I think they're brothers. But either way, it's these two monks, and they post little clips of words of wisdom, stuff like that. And the one I particularly watched was he was talking about how living in the moment is the only way to have a free mind. Living in the past, living in the future, he's making it possible to have a free and open and clear mind. And it really resonated with me. A lot of the stuff you see online, whether it be for motivation or discipline or stuff like that, you could hear it 100 times over and over again, and it's not going to click to you. You have to be ready to hear it. The situation needs to be the situation needs to be relevant. Like, I've heard you need to live in the moment 100 times before, and for whatever reason I needed to hear it that day. And coincidentally, it was on my deadlift day, which is generally the most strenuous, mentally the most strenuous day of the week for me, is lower day. And the fact that I heard it on lower day just tells me that I was meant to hear it. If you're dealing with depression or remorse or regret, generally, that's something from your past. You're living in the past. You're thinking about stuff that happened and you can't let it go. And generally, if you're dealing with anxiety, which means you're worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet, which means you're thinking too much about the future. If you're living in either of those worlds too much, you are unable to live in the moment, and your mind is unable to be free in the moment. And that really resonated with me, because the closer it gets to Wednesday, the closer it gets to my lower day, whether it be squat or deadlift, I get more and more anxious, more and more nervous, because on one hand, I'll be excited about the fact that I get to increase my weight from the last time I squatted or deadlifted. But the other part of me is like, you're doing good right now. Your body feels good. If you just stopped deadlifting right now, if you just stopped squatting right now, it's safe. You never have the risk of, trying to squat or deadlift and hurting yourself again. Like, you're good now, you're safe. But the other part of me is, no, I've got goals, I got things I want to accomplish, and I could be healthier the better I got at these things. The stronger I got, squat, bench, deadlift, the healthier I will be. So it's this internal struggle, angel and devil on each side of the shoulder. Each one's pleading their case and trying like hell to win over. So the closer I get to a deadlift day or squat day, the more I think about what could happen, and the more I think about what did happen. And when I watched that video, I thought to myself, we're going to try this today. Just whenever you start getting anxious or depressed or remorseful, which means you're thinking about the past, you're thinking about the future, you're not living in the present. And living in the present is the only way that you are going to stop something negative from happening, because you have control over what you're doing right now. You have no control over what happened. You have no control over what is going to happen in the future. You have control over what is going to happen right now. So whenever I started to get nervous about, deadlifting, squatting, I would immediately just chop it off. I'd be like, live in the now, think in the now. And then I would just, whatever I was doing, if I was at work, I would just think about what you're doing right now. Deadlift is going to come. It's going to come. But between now and then, dozens of things are going to happen. So throughout the day, when I caught myself thinking about deadlifts and getting nervous about it, I would just repeat to myself over and over again, just live in the now, think about what you're doing. And each time that came up, I was able to refocus on whatever I was doing at work or whatever was going on. And by the time I got, it's time to leave for the gym, that's a half-hour drive. My gym's about half-hour drive away. And everything starts, the closer you get to getting to the gym and starting to warm up, the more real it gets. And the harder it is to listen to yourself and say, just think about the moment. So it always really helps, to have something to focus on, especially with a half-hour drive. There's always podcasts. I listen to podcasts because that's the easiest way to keep myself centered and focused on what's going on. And I was able to do it. I was able to say, okay, just focus on now. What are you listening to? How is it relevant? How is it going to help you? And then by the time I got to the gym and it was time to warm up, which is usually where anxiety peaks, because how I walk out of the gym is 100% dependent on how I warm up. And this has been a huge source of anxiety for me, which is warming up, because how I warm up dictates my health. If I do a poor job of warming up, or if I'm lazy, I don't notice things in my warm up. I don't notice signals, red flags, and I miss them. And then that could have a later negative effect on my lift. So how I walk out of the gym, in my mind, this is how I think about it. Like how I've been walking out of the gym is super dependent on my warm up. So as you can imagine, I have large amounts of anxiety focused around my warm up, because I put my warm up on this high pedestal of, this is so important, and it gives me severe anxiety, because everything, I feel like a fighter wrapping his gloves before a fight. You know what I mean? You're getting ready to do something that could either make you a hero or make you a chump. You know what I mean? You could either come out healthy, or you come out worse, come out hurt. And that's what it feels like to me. It just feels like, you're wrapping your gloves for a fight. You're getting ready for something that could go really bad or really good. And I put way too much emphasis on that. So what I allowed myself to do, because I spent the whole day recentering myself every time I started thinking negatively, living in the moment means you have control. You have control of what happens. So if I am in control, that means I can control the outcome. As long as I do what I'm supposed to do in my warm-up, I kept thinking to myself, instead of thinking, well, if I don't do something right, I'm going to fuck myself up. Instead of thinking that way, I was thinking, these are the things that I have to do. They have been proven to keep me healthy. As long as I do those things and I'm not lazy, I will come out of it fine. And because I was able to center myself, I was able to flip the script and think of things in that perspective. And I think in the past, it's giving me so much anxiety in the past before, because I would not want to do my warm-ups, because it was extremely frustrating, because I was having to do these, elaborate warm-ups, half hour, 45-minute long warm-ups just to squat the bar, just to deadlift the bar. And it was, it seemed like such a huge waste of time, because at the time it was such an insignificant task that I was loading myself up for. It was like going through the checklist of a 747, making sure it's safe to fly before it takes off, just to drive an RC car. Like the means didn't seem in proportion to the ends. I mean, doing all of this stuff to make sure I'm safe, just to do something insignificant like squatting the bar. But now that weight is going up, it feels like I'm actually achieving something. Now I don't necessarily feel all that much laziness in regards to getting ready to perform my movement, because the movement each week, each month is getting heavier and a little more satisfying and a little more appealing. So there's less laziness, because I feel like it's actually working towards something, which is a great example of how you need to trust the process. Because if I were to slack on that stuff in the beginning and be lazy, not take care of all that, I would not be able to do what I am now. You can't really see it through the fog. You know what I mean? Like, you can't see through the fog and realize that what you're doing is working, even though at the time it might seem insignificant. So that is another thing when you're overcoming something, is you need to trust the process and understand that once you get through the fog, you will see what you were doing was what you needed to do. So in short, I just thought it was really cool that I found a way to deal with my anxiety, deal with my depression, remorse, regret, and able to put together a really solid training day. And this was like the first time that I was actually able to see benefits reaped immediately. And it might not work next time, who knows, but it worked this time. And each time, it gets closer to Wednesday and I keep worrying more and more about squat and deadlift, I'll just keep reminding myself, live in the moment, leave depression in the past, leave anxiety in the future, because you can't control the future. Control what you have now. Control what you have now. If you live in the present, you have control over what's going on right now. Just remember that.